Hello, this is OK here, and this is a recap stream of what at the time were the two top candidates rather, to be the challenger to International Master opperwezen in the final of the 2020 Crazyhouse World Championship. And they were Jasugi99, National Master and the favourite, from Canada, and FIDE Master Chicken Crossroad from America. This match was in fact live streamed by Doooovid, and I'll put the link to the live stream in the video notes when I post it on YouTube. But I just wanted to do some deeper analysis on the games, since these were the two favourites at the time. But Jasugi was definitely the favourite of the two. So, for example, Chicken Crossroad had beaten Art of Deception 7-3, but Jasugi had already beaten Art of Deception 8-2. Chicken Crossroad had gone 5-5 against Bugzilla. Jasugi beat Bugzilla 7.5, 2.5. Chicken Crossroad had tied GSVC 5-5. Jasugi yet to play GSVC. That will be, in fact, his final game, and probably the game that will decide for sure that whether Jasugi is going to be the candidate, the challenger rather. Although even if he loses that game, GSVC would have to win 10-0 and win all his remaining matches, something like 9-1, 9-1, 9-1, 9-1, to squeak past Jasugi99. And incidentally, Jasugi99, in case anyone didn't know, is of course 12-teen in previous World Championships. And Chicken Crossroad and 12-teen are, of course, the best two players at Bughouse. So if anyone's watching the stream, this is an analysis stream of these. So I'm not taking challenges. I'm going to have to just ignore those challenges. Okay, and just to continue, Chicken Crossroad beat King Switcher 9-1, and Jasugi also beat King Switcher 9-1. Chicken Crossroad lost 4-6 to Master Tan, but Jasugi would later go on to beat Master Tan 10-0 after this match. Chicken Crossroad beat Mugwort 6-4, but Jasugi beat Mugwort 8-2. Chicken Crossroad beat Penguin 9-1, and there he did better than Jasugi, because Jasugi only beat Penguin 8-2. And finally, the finisher, Chicken Crossroad managed to beat the finisher 6-4, but Jasugi99 beat the finisher 8-2. Oh, and finally, variants only, Chicken Crossroad won 7-3, Jasugi99 10-0. Okay, so we're going to look at this match between the two players who were the top two players in the candidates. And there's 10 games of 3+2. We're going to do some analysis. Sorry I can't play any live games. This is an analysis stream. No live games. And I had previously done a stream of Jasugi99 against King Switcher, and I'll just put the YouTube link if you want to check out my previous streams so you can see what's going on. So, in game one, it's game 1 of 10. This is between the two top candidates at the time. Jasugi99 is white and plays e4. And just Chicken Crossroad plays a6. And why is this? a6, d5 seems to be a little bit of a fashion in the last few months, probably propounded by Jasugi99 himself as black, who's had some success actually by playing a6, d5. And the idea, people are asking for the study link, so I'll just post that in the study and make sure chat's off. Okay, so the idea, but if people are here, I'll just say I'm live streaming this now. Okay. The idea of this is, well, you stop the bishop coming out to b5, and you get out of opening theory as well as another advantage. And in case a lot of people watching this might be chess players and unfamiliar with Crazyhouse, I really recommend trying out Crazyhouse, because you'll spot mating patterns and learn to be much more aggressive in your play in standard chess. And and ultimately ultimately Crazy House is chess, but it's like superpowered chess. You have more pieces in your pocket. You have more power to do things. It won't improve your endgames, that's for sure, but it will improve your calculation and your mating technique and your concepts of development and position. Very important, like your concepts of holes in your position and development, such ideas. Okay, so d takes e4, knight takes e4, and knight f6, knight g5, knight c6, and knight f3. And just as an example, there had been a previous game in this line with knight takes f7, so this is just as an example. White could go straight for an attack here, so Jasugi could have done this, and just going straight for some kind of attack, winning a knight, and so this had happened in the match between Mathace and Retarded Platypus. But Black had done actually quite well in this game, and in fact Black had resigned. Sorry, White had resigned in this position. So this knight cycle, although it exposes the king, with accurate defense, Black is actually okay. So the point is, once Black consolidates, he does have the extra piece, and so he's fine. Okay, so Jasugi knight 9 doesn't go straight for the sack, instead plays much more solidly. Now, there's always like a threat of some drop here and taking this pawn. Or drop here or here. Why couldn't it come immediately? So is there a good reason why it can't come immediately? I think it can't come immediately because okay, so this sack would become too powerful. So knight takes f7, king takes, and knight g5, and yeah, the king just doesn't have. Okay, the king doesn't have space. Okay, so of course, so what I just was completely missing. I don't need the engine now. Is that this move is actually a very aggressive move because this sack is now much more powerful, and that's why Black plays e6. Okay, I just missed that when I was, and now because White doesn't have the threats of getting the king on the light squares. White has to do something to protect this pawn, otherwise a pawn drop here or here could pick up this pawn. So that's why he defends. Often pushing the c-pawn early is dangerous in Crazy House because it weakens your light squares around your king. But there's no dangerous bishop coming out here, there's no knight coming out to target these squares, so actually in this position it's fine. e4. At e4 comes anyway, and he goes for the sack. He goes for the sack regardless. Takes this knight, takes the rook, and many people in this position, especially beginning Crazy House players, would say, well, why not take the queen? You've got a whole queen sitting there. But you'd win the queen for a piece, whereas the rook is a free rook. So it's the assessment, what's more valuable? A rook and a piece, because you still have a knight on h8, a rook and a piece or a queen? And actually in Crazy House, a rook and a piece is worth quite similar to a queen. But the thing with knight takes is White will lose his attack. So if I actually just show the engine, if knight takes queen, the engine is even suggesting doing this first because White would have to retake and then taking this knight. And White is doing very well for sure, but knight takes rook is even stronger because you keep the attack going. Because after knight takes queen, knight takes knight, there's no more attack. Although you're up, you've got a nice queen. Okay, pawn here, bishop d7, takes here. So obviously White's doing very nicely here. The king is exposed in the center of the board. So how to finish, how to convert. And in this position, Black is trying to counterattack, but turns out not to work because he's able to even sack his queen and claim that he has mate in this position. He didn't play mate in this position. He just, White in fact, Jasugi just castled in this position. But he does in fact have mate. And it all is because this knight is defending the checking square on the king, and you can take it with check. So Jasugi missed a mate here. It's quite a pretty mate. So the point is, if you take back with the pawn, you can throw in a check, king here, and pick up the queen with check. And if the king is ever stepping up, you just have a bishop here and a pawn here as checkmate. So as we'll see coming up. Oh, okay. So we won't see it coming up. So if king d6, pawn at c5, king comes up, pawn here, king comes up, knight here is checkmate. Cuts off the king, or indeed actually rook here is also checkmate. So you just drive the king up the board. So since pawn takes doesn't work, you might try king takes, but that isn't much better. Knight at e5 prevents the king from running back. So you might think, oh, I'm just going to slide away here. After all, white doesn't have a bishop, but it doesn't quite work. This is a rather sneaky move. Rook at c5. It actually works because the idea is you're going to drive the king to here and then take this bishop. Here, like, oh, that would just be mate straight away. But if the king comes back, you take the bishop, and he thinks he's getting away, because after all, takes, queen takes, and the black king is completely safe. But there's a very nice move white has here, which is this check. And the idea is you're forced to take it, and you're forced to come to a light square. Now you're winning this queen with check. You're winning the queen with check, and if king takes bishop, queen here is checkmate. And if king here, just simply pawn takes pawn is checkmate. Notice how knight and bishop on the same colour squares combine for this mate. So it's a very nice mate that he had here. Now notice if the king goes directly here, the same kind of line will work. Pawn here, king here, pawn here, takes, and knight here. Takes, takes, he's forced to come here, and you win the queen. So it's exactly the same. Okay, so... But Jasugi actually missed this mating idea and just castled. He's still doing very well, but now black can consolidate, defending these weak squares. I mean, in particular this one. Rook on the back rank, so some desperation. Notice this is actually a dangerous move. If you take this bishop, this is already probably checkmating. So if you step back, queen h2 will be mate, so you probably have to step forwards. And then I'm going to cheat and use the engine. Queen at h2. If king takes g4, yeah, that's what I was thinking. You could even sack here. Queen takes bishop, king takes. What's the finish? I was thinking bishop at h6. That will cover the dark squares. This pawn covers the light squares. So you really only have one square you can go to, which is here. And then you can cover that with the pawn. And now where do you go? Oh, you can step back. Ooh, I'm worried I missed something. Oh, but fortunately this square is covered, so this is checkmate. So that's why you can't take the knight. But if you go here, then apparently there's also a mate with knight g to e5. So obviously I hadn't seen this at all. Knight g to e5. If you take the knight, you're just giving white more material in a way, but if you don't take it, this queen takes bishop is coming in with check, and this queen is coming into here. So this surely is mate. If you do take it, takes, maybe you can come up to here, so there's no queen takes bishop check, but then there's queen takes this bishop check. Blocks. Okay, so I'm going to just d5, king to d4, just trying to survive, knight c6, king takes pawn, pawn here, king here. Notice the queen is cutting off the king on the third rank, and bishop at d2, it turns out, will be checkmate. So this is just to illustrate, that was a forced mate, by the way. That's just to illustrate how dangerous bishop takes h2 is. So just because this is a free piece, it's very important in Crazyhouse not necessarily to bite on free pieces. You've got to watch out. What's my opponent planning if I take that piece? And sometimes it's best just to slide aside, as Jasugi99 did, and he safely did. Queen at h5. Now, actually, the first few games of this match were especially interesting, which is why I'm going into such depth on them. So white takes the queen with check, and whenever you can win a queen with check, this is obviously really strong in Crazyhouse. It's usually the end of the game. Knight at c5, promotes, blocks, takes here, queen takes knight, blocks, checkmate, because the bishop's cutting off the king. So that was game one. Jasugi99 won as white. So game two, Chicken Crossroad is white, and we see these sorts of e4, knight f6 lines, and in this sort of position, it's sometimes called Krosky's Gambit, you allow your knight to be taken, because if it were taken, you actually open up your bishop with tempo. You then play d5 next, you're opening up this bishop with tempo. And okay, you've lost a piece, but you have a pawn, and pawns are really good to attack a castled king on h3. So black usually gets quite a comfortable position. I'd say white might still have a slight edge, like as he does in the opening position. But white doesn't take because actually black gets quite a comfortable position. To such an extent that even some top players will go d6 in this position to try and provoke this takes and then play d5. So actually lose a tempo to try and provoke this. As well as opening up the bishops, it also means your king is slightly safer with 4 pawns in front of it, and the f6 square is secure. So even if the opponent drops on h6, they can't get in on f6 quite so easily. So that's what Jasugi99 is going for as black in this position. It is a kind of French sort of setup. It is fairly cramped. The light squared bishop is blocked in. And he goes for a sacrifice. Knight takes f2, king takes f2. So here, white is up material, but his king is exposed. So it's the kind of situation where the pressure is on black to attack. If white can consolidate, then his extra material will pay. And Sleipnir says another option in this opening is g takes f6 after e takes f6, although I believe it is worse theoretically. It can lead to some interesting lines in bullet, though. Yes, that's true. So e takes f6 is g takes f6 rather is interesting if you want to open up this rook and going for some attack on the castled king this way. I don't play it myself, but yeah, it definitely is quite a good way of getting your opponent out of book. So yeah, good point, Sleipnir. But instead we went into this line where the knight gambit is refused, and instead black gambits his knight in another way, exposing the black king. And knight takes pawn. So this is really good. So I'd like to just show you what is the idea of this move, because on the face of it, you've already sacrificed one piece. On the face of it, you're sacrificing another piece. So I'd like to show you a game, Jan Lee against opperwezen, where opper played this knight takes pawn, and Jan took the second knight. And what's the idea? This is what opper played as black against Jan Lee. I think I don't have a date. I'd have to open the opening explorer to see when this was. It's not coming up. How come? So you get back the piece, so it's not really a sacrifice. Knight at f3. The queen backed off. Queen e2, c4. Oh, the bishop ended up being trapped. So it's from this year, in fact. Yeah, that's what I thought. Just from this year. So it's quite a recent game. So queen here check, wins the knight. The queen obviously is exposed. Whenever the queen is exposed in Crazyhouse, it can be kicked around with tempo, so it's not nice having a queen that doesn't have something. If the queen is in the middle of the board, you want to have something to do with it. So if it gets attacked, it goes, oh, no problem, I'll take this pawn next. So this was a very nice move, actually, because the queen was planning on taking this pawn next, and it both attacks and defends. So queen backed off, traps the bishop. White goes for a counterattack. So this just shows, I think I might have seen this game even. So, meaning at the time, earlier this, it must be in the last couple of months even. Bishop here check, just providing some luft for his king, I imagine, as well as other things. Takes, king here, and yeah. So black is actually doing fine because he's up a lot of material. So he's trying to stop the promotion. And then takes here, queen here, bishop here, taking the dangerous pawn. Oh, rook takes knight, and this very creative move. Knight here check, the queen is pinned. If you take the pawn, we've got bishop takes queen, and so on. Knight here check, and he finds the mate. King takes h3, knight f4, pawn here. Knight takes queen, discovered check. And I think at this point, Jan Lee resigned. There's a discovered check, and the queen is coming in and mating. So it just shows this idea, knight takes d4. That's really what's going on. It's not really a sack. You're actually winning this pawn. So What should white do? Probably should just take it and admit that they lost a pawn here. Rook f1 was what chicken did in this position. Turns out not to be good because of bishop c5, bishop e3, queen h4 check. So black should be doing quite well here. Knight at g3. He's doing quite well, but it's a really complicated position. As I said, the first 3 games of this match were all really interesting. There are actually many interesting ideas in this position. There's simply taking on h2, which is fine. And the point is that the queen doesn't really get trapped because you can take this knight, and if you take here, then you're taking here, and you're getting quite a lot of compensation for the queen. Yeah, maybe something like so bishop at g4, knight at f3 blocks, and pawn at f4. So something like this. And eventually you're getting a knight, you're putting a knight here. So black is doing very nicely here. So that would have been one way of playing it. Another way of playing it, which is very interesting, is dropping a pawn on f3. So if you take here, you're taking here with check. If you take with check. Okay, the opponent can block, but now you can take, and you have ideas of knight here, check at some point. But also, so if white just retakes this knight, you have knight at h3 check. Knight at h3 check, king takes, queen takes. I was thinking queen takes g2, but hang on, there's a bishop hanging first. So bishop takes bishop would come, and then you could take this knight, and as I said, you still have this set of knight here check. But even stronger than knight at h3 check. So they're both strong. Queen h4, because the king's got nowhere to go. The king is stuck on this diagonal by this knight, and now you have discovered ideas. So that would have been a very interesting way of playing it. Of course, g takes f3 is not forced. Another good move in this position is knight takes d4, bishop takes, and then queen takes f3. Takes. The reason why not queen takes is because bishop here comes, so king takes, but then just pawn here, pawn takes knight. And you can see it's not quite mate, but you could take the bishop or you could take the pawn. If you take the pawn, then there's knight at b2 coming, king here, knight at g1, and that's going to pick up a queen. With your 2 knights, you're going to have 1 knight here and 1 knight here. Very nasty. But so the more logical move here is that this dangerous bishop is cutting off the king, so why not take that one? But then pawn there comes and a knight here follows, so it's also rather. And there are lots of good moves in this position. There's knight at d5 is one. Just simply swapping off the knight for the bishop is another. Just keep trading. Trades are good for black because the white king is weak. But knight at d5 I think looks like a classy move. Okay, so it just shows these are some of the ideas that could have been played here after either queen takes h2 or actually at f3 first. But instead he took the knight, and of course the threat is to take the bishop with check next, so white has to take the bishop. And then he took the knight on c3 and threw in a check. And white, I think, is... I think white is having to... So black is still doing well here, but the edge is being eroded. Queen is being kicked, bishop takes f7. I'm turning the engine on just to show how the edge is slowly being eroded in this position. King comes back with check, blocks. I mean, still, black is playing quite well. Knight here attacking the queen. Bishop here check, blocks, and he's sacked. So 2 pieces for the queen. The knight comes in. Queen at f7. Actually, he's still surviving. Queen takes pawn. So yeah, so black is somehow still surviving, and this is a very dangerous move. We saw earlier, if you bite on this, you get mated. I mean, just to show again, if you bite, you're going to get mated. So you've got to be very careful with those sorts of moves. Gingerbread says, why does knight g1 win a queen? You can't take twice with rooks. Ooh, okay, I missed that. So this is at f3 takes. Okay, so this is a long line. It was this one takes here, bishop here, pawn here, takes the bishop, takes here. So it was, if instead of queen takes bishop, if he takes here, I was thinking knight here check, king e2, knight at g1, rook takes g1, takes again with the rook, and we're also threatening rook here, rook takes g1. You're right, you're not winning, you're winning lots of rooks rather than winning a queen. Sorry about that. But you could win the queen as rook at f2 at the end of that line. Rook at f2 check. And if king takes e3, you're winning the queen with check, so probably queen takes rook looks safer. So yeah, you're winning the queen in the end. But I think the main point is that king is just completely exposed. White's got loads of pieces in hand, but doesn't have time to put them on to defend himself. So that would have been really strong for black, but white started fighting back. Basically, it turns into quite a. With this move, it looks like white's got some nasty threats. Okay, white has to sidestep. It's really anyone's game at this point. Takes here again. Very good move from Chicken, sidestepping. King h1, king f1 are correct. King takes bishop is wrong. Rook at h2 takes. Bishop takes g3. Takes, so good play from Chicken because this king is actually surviving. Bishop here, check. Bishop here. He gets the queen, but this is the this is a critical mistake. Knight takes g7. Queen at f6. Queen at f6 check is the critical mistake. So it's true that black has 2 pawns, a knight, and a queen, but simply bishop takes bishop is good enough because this is defended. This might look, I'm going to show you, this doesn't work. Knight at g4 here, notice all the dark squares are defended. Another move that, suppose black does nothing. So I'm just going to go h6. This is just to show, like, if you do nothing, what happens. So you should be able to see instantly this is a back rank mate. Just pawn here, check, takes, pawn here, and it's a back rank mate. So the way you should be able to see this instantly is because you have at least 2 diagonals in your hand, and so you can swap off the rooks along this back rank, and you only need 2 diagonals and a rook, and you know you have this mate. It turns out you have an even nicer mate, which is rook at b8, and then knight here, check. And if king here, queen here is mate, so he has to go here, and then knight here is checkmate. So that's just a blocking off this king. And as Gingerbread Man says, the point is to remove the defender and improve the dark squared bishop. Absolutely. I mean, this bishop is defending this king, and bishop takes. But I said even more than that. It's that it's a mate threat and you are not getting mated. So white's mate is faster than black's mate. It's the kind of position where you have to think whose mate is faster. So that's why you can't do a nothing move. You have to do something. Okay, so what could you do? Something like queen at d2, pawn here, queen takes bishop, and this is sort of desperation, bishop takes knight. This is a way of kind of clearing out, giving up your queen for 2 pieces. Now your black king is safe. But this doesn't work because black just doesn't have enough pieces. And bishop at f6 is a brilliant move, again removing that defender of e7, and suddenly check to defend again. Again, you need to try and get in some more defense, but just pawn takes knight. White's just got too much material, and it's hopeless. So white should have won this game. That's basically my point. White should have won this game with bishop takes c5, but give Chicken some well, let's not be too hard on chicken. He only had 6 seconds on the clock, and queen at f6. Unfortunately, lets the king run away a little bit. And just to say, I mean, it would be very natural to play at e7 to think, oh, it's defended. Why not play at e7 in this position? Bishop takes bishop, pawn takes queen. White does not need the queen to mate. As we said, he only needs 2 pawns and a rook to mate. So this simple calculation. So that's why king c8 is a brilliant move, just running away. And now it's just it's an unclear position, but it's just really hard for white to defend. And with 4 seconds on the clock, so it turns out bishop takes c5 it's still the obvious move to play. It's a hanging piece, but unfortunately chicken blundered in time pressure, and Jasugi pounced, just hides away his king, and now he just delivers the checkmate. Very simple. He's got so much material in hand. So 2-0 after 2 games. Now, if you thought those 2 games were quite intense, unfortunately the third game is going to be even more intense. I think it gets a little bit easier after this one, but I had to do some quite deep analysis on the first 3 games because there was so much interesting stuff. Now, this is quite classic. E6 is actually a really nice move. You might say, why are you giving up a pawn? But notice how black actually has got really nice development. We'll see some of the later games in this match, how chicken as black had a real problem with development. But this game actually worked out really well after this, not taking it back immediately, having really good development. And it makes for a really interesting game. Black has nice development. Okay, so in this position, sometimes knight f6 is played, sometimes knight c6. But white has black's got nice development, but white has control of the center, unfortunately. So white is still better. At d5. Okay, so just going for attacking, giving up material, giving up even more material. So now black is a whole piece down. But okay, maybe a piece for a pawn now. But he does have an open king to attack. Knight g to h3, knight c6, bishop e2, bishop e4. So white is clearly better here. Knight c takes d5, e takes d5. But there's a very strong move white missed here, which is simply c3. King g1 is also strong. The reason why c3 is strong is if the bishop, why was it again? If the bishop backs off, I'm going to have to get a reminder why. So rook f1 is now good, maybe. What else is good? Can we work on e6? Yes, we can go e6 immediately. That's also good. So that's why. Okay, but this is actually quite a double. The reason why I imagine he didn't play something like c3 is this is quite a double-edged idea, because this check actually hits c3 and lets black sack even more. Sack another piece for 2 pawns and try and continue attacking. So you sack for 2 pawns. Now you're hitting the queen. You take here. You're actually winning second for 3 pawns. Get a 3rd pawn. So it looks quite double-edged. But black doesn't have enough. So this looks dangerous. Bishop at c5, but you can just block. So white can defend. Black now has to defend the g7 threat. You can't mess about with you can't mess about with taking this or something. You just have to check and pick up the queen. Now this is interesting. So so white has managed to defend this diagonal, and it's with a protected piece. How to continue? This is quite pretty actually. And the way to continue is you actually create a weakness on g7. So takes, and get in on g7, and you're willing to sack takes, because you're deflecting the queen from protecting the d5 pawn. Takes here, queen takes pawn, knight here. So this would be actually completely crushing for white. He could even sack his queen and go for this knight here checkmate. Very pretty mate with 3 knights. So at f6 doesn't work because you get a weakness on g7. You just sack everything and you're invading. Turns out the best move for black here is something like at f5, hitting the queen. Because if white gets a queen and black also gets a queen, actually the white king is not so safe if black has a queen in hand. So backing off makes sense, and black has to defend. And it could be that white gets a piece, blocks, there's a nasty pin. Just block it, takes, knight here, backs off again. Okay, so here that obviously backing off to here makes sense because the queen can't then be hit with tempo. Did I go through the queen trade? I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I didn't show why. The queen trade doesn't really suit white because so black is still defending. So it's white to play here, and there's no mate. So what does Engine think? Engine, I mean, it's unclear, but it's white to play with pawn takes knight being so white wants to play something like bishop c to e3, but you can just simply take this knight, and I'm sure knight at f3 is looking like a threat. So bishop takes knight to try and defend f3, but now we're going h takes g2. So it's looking hairy. I mean, if we just did this, obviously we're gonna be in trouble. So why are we going to be in trouble? Because so this would be hard to see. Knight h3, the idea is you want to take the knight with check, and if the knight takes you, he doesn't have control on the light squares anymore, so you can just do cookie crumb all the way up. Pawn at g2, king takes g2, pawn at f3. If he takes, he's going to get mated with queen at e4, king here, and rook here, checkmate. And if he steps back, pawn at g2, king here, and queen here, checkmate. So not easy stuff. Yeah, bishop and knight hanging and no active moves really, says Gingerbread Man. And Abhijit says, thanks for covering this. You're welcome. So it's just black has an attack already, and I mean if you did like nothing moves like this, then what is it? Queen at d1. Oh, they're saying knight e2 and bishop takes bishop is a threat, but queen at d1. I just don't see how to defend. I mean, the engine might say it's roughly equal, but it's just hard to. In this position, the engine says it's roughly equal. Like it's only -4, but it's just really hard to see how do I play this position as white. And why would you do that when in this position we're doing really great? We're doing great in this position. White's got an attack on the queen. Just back off, keep the back rack defended, and our attack remains. And again, if he does this, we're just going to go for g7, f6, g7 and f6, and take this pawn. Just try and drop pawns on g7 and f6. That's the plan. And we also, at some point, we could also win a free piece. So what happened is, so this is just showing the line of why, just to back up, because we kind of might have lost the track here. This is backing up of why c3, although it looks dangerous, is actually quite interesting, because we take apart, and I say white is still okay, although it looks it's a good move. It looks very risky, but white is still okay. This would be the best play from black, but it's still okay. Takes. Even bishop here looks dangerous. Just block it. Takes. Knight here. So you can see how this gives black a lot of play, but white is up a lot of material. Queen c2 is this logical, safe move. No tempi on that king. Queen d4 is more interesting in a way because you're inviting c5. And this is just very beautiful, that the fact you can allow c5 because now you have e6, give away your queen, and it turns out this is a forced checkmate for white. If the king goes to here, you've got knight coming in here, taking the queen with check. Obviously, if the king takes this, you have knight here check. That's a very easy mate. And if the king tries to run away, you drop a bishop on, you do this, and you don't take that queen. Note, if you take the queen, game over. Queen here check, knight here checkmate. So this is what I'm trying to say. This is double-edged play. But you can throw in another check, throw in another check. You're throwing in a check covering your back rank, and also throwing checks just covering some of the dangerous squares. And then you can take the queen, and now white is completely winning. So this is just and if you don't want to do anything so double-edged, which no human would want to do, there is always queen c2, which is very solid. You could try f2, just takes, and lose the bishop, but then just move in. And then this is a very nice idea. e7, the idea knight takes here next. And so queen takes this is not going to turn out well. You're hitting this next, but you're also hitting this. So, and at g7 is also a problem. I mean, so this is really tough. At g7, rook g8. You could even take that c7 is not, you can't defend c7 because it's defended by the, okay, so this is just completely winning for white. So he'd have to do something like queen d7, but then you've got this takes here, and at some point you're going to drop a knight and attack that queen. You're all over his position. So this is just all, this whole deep analysis, way too deep, I'm sorry, but I thought it was interesting. It was all to show that this move c3, although it looks risky, because it's inviting a piece for 2-pawn exchange, is actually strong. And unfortunately, rook f1 is not good because it's leaving this diagonal open. So if you wanted to play maybe a safer move, king g1 immediately is also good. But rook f1 invites, unfortunately, the thing is you don't want to take this, because takes, and knight here comes. So he backs off, but now takes, bishop here check, and you see it's looking slightly uncomfortable for white. Takes obviously pins, and now he plays c3, trying to get back control on some of his dark squares. Pawn e2 is a good move. Here it turns out this rook b1 is actually a slight mistake. Rook a1 is safer, because on b1 you're slightly exposed along this diagonal. But a very minor mistake from Jasugi. So this game, game 3, Chicken is actually, as black, making some really nice progress. Knight here defending the rook, so he's got 2 knights and a king defending the rook. But here, very difficult move to spot, which is, it's almost instinctive to take with the knight because that keeps the pin. But it's not the best move, because this knight is a great knight and it has other ideas. If you take with the bishop, and I'll take back with the h knight because the h knight is less active. This is a nice central knight. Bishop takes pawn, and if you don't take back this pawn, I'm taking this one next, and I'm completely demolishing your whole center. So you take it, but I take back, and look, I'm hitting your queen, your bishop, your rook. You can't so go queen c2, because I just take your bishop with check. Probably I have to give up a whole rook in this position, or else give up the queen. So suppose I give up the rook. And this, I think, is a very interesting position. It's not clearly one for black or something. White does have attacking ideas. He has e6 ideas. He has h6 ideas. But he's also down a couple of exchanges. And he has very weak dark squares in his position. Like e3 square is very weak. I mean, so there are lots of lines. You could go straight for knight e2, bishop takes e2. Notice if queen takes e2, there's knight takes pawn coming in, which looks uncomfortable. And then you think, oh, but white's got a counterattack. White could attack both the knight and this pawn, and they can't really defend very easily, because if you do this, there's a reason why that doesn't work. Just at f5, and if you try and attack this queen in some way, that doesn't really work very well for you. You can just go straight in for this attack. I think it's nasty. So this looks like a dangerous attack. Hi there, Opera in disguise. This looks like a dangerous attack for white. He's either winning the pawn or the knight. It turns out black's got a beautiful defense. Rook at b1. And rook at b1. So the idea is if queen takes pawn, of course, we just come in and checkmate you. So that's the idea. And if you take the knight, then oof, I'm going to delete that from the. If you take the knight, I think you just drop a pawn here, and this is looking good for black. So rook at b1 is quite a nice defense. It turns out white's got a good counter defense. Pawn at d7. And you don't want to go king f8 because then this is mating you. Apparently, king takes queen. Bishop at f6 is a mating attack, very strong mating attack. If the king goes, you're controlling the light squares. So you have to take back, and this looks scary. This looks very scary. So you blocks off the king, knight here, check. Now, in this sort of position, where should the king go? Well, it turns out if you went this way, you will be getting mated. Because queen here, check, pawn here, check, promote, takes, sack the queen, and if you block, you only have rooks and queens to block with. That's the problem. But okay, this is not so easy to see. Bishop at d6 takes, then bishop at e7 takes, then e takes d6. Whoa, whoa, whoa! This is really weird because the idea is if you take the rook, you have a beautiful two-pawn mate. Pawn here, check. King c8. Pick up another pawn with check. How crazy is that? And then pawn here, check. Now that's insane. I had not seen that when I was preparing for this stream. So wow, bishop at d6, then bishop at e7. That's something, isn't it? Okay, bishop at d6. What else could be done here instead of taking? Can't see anything else. Bishop at e7. Takes. Oh, king f6. King f6 could be played. Trying to run away, and I'll just. Apparently, there are just too many pieces on this side of the board. Another knight's coming in, so this square is controlled. This square is controlled. You can never get to this square, so it's just checkmate. So wow, that's some stuff. And Opper says rook b1 protects b7 if queen c8 ideas. Rook b1 protects b7. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, interesting. So the black rook here is we'll come to this in a second. Yeah. Very, very, very nice. Okay, that's great. So the point is, pawn here is actually mating because takes, rook here. If you try and run, you do this, takes, knight here, check, pawn here, check, and the other knight comes in. And okay, so basically you have enough material just to be able to seal the deal. What else could he do? Yeah, there's just too many pieces. So it turns out it's a forced mate. We're looking at the top two at the time, the top two Crazyhouse candidates, and I really recommend all the chess players watching to try out Crazyhouse. Sorry I won't be able to take challenges because we're analysing this very interesting match between these two top candidates in the Crazyhouse World Championship. It turns out that since this match, the top two candidates are now looking like Doooovid and maybe GSVC. So, but that's because this match didn't quite go Chicken's way. He's too loved down at the moment. So this is really interesting how in this position, obviously you can't step back or it's checkmate in one. You can't step this way or there's queen, pawn drop and promote. You can step to the queen side. And as Opper says in the chat, because of this rook on b1, this king is actually safe. Because if pawn here check, king here, queen at c8 check, now you might think, oh, you've got enough for a back rank mate. We have a second diagonal in our pocket here after all. And you would be right if we were to be stupid enough to just allow this trade to happen. We would indeed be in some trouble. Because what's the continuation with the rook and the bishops? Because with bishop, I'm not quite seeing it. Rook blocks with bishop, because otherwise if he blocks bishop at d7, king here, takes another bishop, he tries to run, takes a rook, he tries to run. So this is strong. There should be a mate somewhere here. Rook at c8, blocks, takes, rook at c8 here. Okay, I can't see the mate, but bishop at b8. If king b6, bishop takes c7, that looks really nasty. But if king a8, there's still bishop takes c7. So Stockfish is actually struggling to see the mate, but there is a mate somewhere here. And the reason it's struggling is this rook is actually doing a little bit of defensive work. But there is a mate in the end here. King takes bishop. Oh, it's not seeing an all checks mate. That's what's amazing about this position. It's just saying my king is safe. Okay, but as Opper was saying, and let's just get back to the point. In this position, when you go queen c8, you can actually just go king a7, and there isn't queen takes b7 checkmate because of this rook. So that rook is, yeah. So of course you don't take the queen. You just run and say my b7 square is defended. Actually, white doesn't have anything here, and black is winning, surprisingly. He's got queen takes c7, which threatens mate in 1, but I imagine now black gets to... So it's not so easy, but you have to defend accurately. You now get rook at c6, apparently. You have to defend. But yeah, so all the way back here. Knight takes bishop. It looks like queen takes knight is bad because of knight takes pawn, but then it looks like knight takes pawn is bad because of queen here, but then it looks like queen here is actually bad because of rook b1, really nice move. So we have this whole kind of, refutation upon refutation. And then it looks like rook b1 might be bad because at d7 and the queens are going to get traded. But this rook turns out to be a savior on b1 because it's going to stop the mate after pawn here, king here, queen at c8, king here. There's no queen takes b7. So kind of think how many moves ahead that rook at b1 move was. And Opper says it's scary to allow d7. If Doooovid got some attack, it's very scary. Turns out to be very useful, that rook on b1 though, so it's okay. Indeed. So coming back to this position, I'm afraid this game I really go into depth on. So where do we go? So after knight takes bishop, I wouldn't take with the queen because of that rook b1 being so strong. But white can take back with the bishop. And let's just say this position is still pretty unclear. So, I mean, Stockfish says black is better, but as I said, white has ideas too. So it's pretty unclear. So this all came from this idea, and this very unusual idea of taking with the pinning with the bishop, because normally in these sorts of positions you'd always take with the knight. It's just automatic. It's just this knight is actually a great knight. And bishop takes c3 is really strong if you keep the knight here. But he did the obvious move, which is taking with the knight, takes, and here. It's a good move. And many human players, these people are not human chicken and 12 Doooovid 99, or many more human players would play, oh, what's wrong with knight takes rook? This is not good because of bishop takes knight, king takes, pick up another pawn, and maybe we want to save the knight instead of taking this bishop. So you save your knight and defend this, but bishop takes pawn comes anyway. Queen comes in, takes this knight, knight comes in, takes, even sacks the queen, takes here. This is just to show, and bishop here. Okay, so it's nothing forced, it's not a forced mate. The idea of bishop here is you want to pick up a rook to drop here with checkmate. And here you just want to clear out this pawn because pawn here will be mating, pretty much. Promote next. Blocks, takes anyway. Okay, so this is just to show it's not completely forced, but that would be an example of why knight takes e1 in this position is not a good idea. That knight is a crucial defender for f2. So queen takes from Doooovid 99 is accurate, takes back, takes with the rook. Knight takes pawn. Very nice moves from chicken. You can't take here because the bishop takes rook, and black is just streaming in. But very nice defense from Jasugi99 with bishop g4, threatening to take this bishop. And maybe this was the critical point. He had to save the bishop by swapping it off, and then maybe go at d2 and start his own counterattack. And this looks quite scary because, wait a second, you're allowing this at d7. And it turns out, and this is crazy, it's been maybe at least a year since I've seen a position like this. This is why I find this game 3 amazing. Queen takes pawn, bishop takes queen. You willingly give up the queen with check. When do you do that in Crazyhouse? Like, almost never. But you willingly do it because king f8. The bishop is on the square where knight would want to be. The bishop, this dark squared bishop, is defending e7. It turns out white just doesn't have an attack. You give up your queen for a pawn, and white doesn't have any attack, and this attack is just far too strong. You don't want to go here because of pawn here. You don't really want to do rook here because takes, and this just gets repeated. You don't want to defend with the queen because then takes, and knight here comes. So this is seriously uncomfortable for white. Let's look at the chat. Gingerbread Man says, I have to start work. We'll try and catch the rest later on Twitch. Thanks a lot. Okay, appreciate you a lot. Oh, I appreciate you dropping by, Gingerbread Man. Thanks for the support. And Opper also says, gotta go, bye. Yeah, see you, Opper. Thanks also for dropping by. This was the highlight. I think this game is the highlight. At f5 was played instead, and this turns out to be a mistake. White gets to clear away that dangerous bishop, clear away the knight, and just solidify his position. Again, rook at e2, though, is a mistake. So white has actually got a brilliant move in this position, which I think, I can't engine confirm it, I think it's forced mate. Amazing move for white in this position. So this is why this game 3 is so rich. And the amazing move is knight at f6. You can't not take that knight. I think that's the problem. If you go king f8, there's bishop at c5 check, bishop at e7, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7. I can't see it all the way through. But okay, knight at d7 check, and that's forcing you to lose the queen with check. Okay, that's the problem. You can try and run, but apparently knight f6 is mating in this position. G takes f6, rook at g7. If he takes the rook, pawn takes pawn is coming, and the queen will be mating along these dark squares. So king f8, rook takes f7, king takes f7, e6, queen f7 as a mate threat, so he tries to run out. Queen at f7, king g5. Where's the mate? Where's the mate? f4, king here, and at g3 will mate. Where else can he go? He can also go back to h6, but then bishop here simply is mate. So coming back here, he does have to take this knight, unfortunately. I think he has to take this knight. And then there's a very brilliant move. It's very tempting to just take back with check, but then bishop takes rook, and I think it's not a problem. Or maybe it is a problem, because, yeah. If takes, is there something going on? Apparently that's supposed to be... white does have mate in this position. Mate in 12 is called for white. Amazing. So maybe that's the way to do it. E takes f6. But another really interesting move is at g7. And the point is throwing away a bishop here. Why? It's to create a weakness here. And knight's going to come in and control these two squares. Check, check. If you go king takes, the point is this knight comes in and you get a mate along like so. So that's why you have to go queen takes, but then takes. If knight takes, knight can't take. Knight is pinned. So king takes, but now you can. You're controlling this back rank. Here, just rook takes, bishop, rook takes is checkmate. So now he has to give up the queen, and then this is checkmate. So knight f6 is this really crazy move, and it turns out g7 might not be necessary. Maybe this straight away is checkmate, like something like bishop at e6. The engine is not seeing it at this depth, but apparently bishop at c6 is mating, followed by either knight at g7. If the king comes to f8, there are two very tempting moves. There's also pawn at g7, pawn at e7 coming, so king would have to go to d7. We see the same kind of lines, knight coming here. If the king ever steps up, it's dead. If the king steps back, it's weak on b7. So maybe taking that bishop's a mistake. Why can't he just block? But that doesn't work either. I hadn't seen this at all. I hadn't seen this. This is amazing. Rook at f8. The idea is if rook takes rook, you have a smothered mate. This game is just so rich. It's just crazy. But if king takes rook, you now have like a back rank. Pawn here, check. King here. Pawn takes rook, gets a queen. You can block, but knight here is going to be a smothered mate at the end. So yeah, what a rich game. Really unfortunately, knight at f6 was not played in this position. Doooovid had 49 seconds and played just solidified with another rook, and actually the position's unclear here. After bishop takes, rook takes, queen here, it looks like a decent move. Apparently just castling was good though. Knight here, but this queen is getting hit, and he gave up the queen, and somehow it's, as time is running low for both sides, especially for chicken. Yeah, so at this point, chicken is just on 10 seconds. This is really difficult to play. And Doooovid just makes sure there's no obvious breakthrough and maintains a solid position. Pushes e6, pushes here. Forces the trade of queens. And finishes. And at this point, a queen d7, black just resigned. Because after king g8, there's knight here, check. White's got all these rooks in hand, so if you take it, there's this and this checkmate. And if you don't take it, you have the Arabian mate in the corner. So that was game 3. That was a really fabulous game. So hope you guys enjoyed that. And I know I've gone like really deep into the analysis. Hopefully some of the rest of the games will be slightly less deep. I think they were more straightforward. So at this point, Doooovid99 is 4 love up. Sorry, 3 love up. 3 love. So he's got, it's just 1 break of serve. He's won his 2 games as white, and he's won 1 game as black against chicken. So this is game 4 as black. This is the French bishop stuck behind the pawn chain. Takes here. So black trying to make something happen. I mean, trying to get his pieces moving, trying to get his king somewhere. Tries to get his king out the way. So this is the problem is black just doesn't have very much space. So in this whole position, white is slightly better just because of space issues. Bishop c4. Rook goes back defending the pawn. And probably here there's a critical mistake from Doooovid99. Maybe a move like bishop h4 and the game goes on. Instead he played bishop here, maybe with ideas of going bishop here and bishop takes pawn, stuff like this. It's too slow. And this is a game-winning move from Chicken Crossroad. Knight at f6, and you just see how black's position just collapses. Black chooses to give up the queen, but he's dropping pawns, check, he's dropping a rook, and white just crashes through. And notice how black just has pawns in hand. This queen is just chomping everything. It's either taking here. Yeah, what's coming next? I mean, I suppose like the knight moved here. Oh, there's just queen e8 blocks and queen takes d7. Okay, so it's just very hard to see what to do. Suvit Angirash says, how many chapters can you make? You're allowed to make 64 chapters in a study. Chapters 1 to 10 I did in a previous stream. I'm now doing chapters 11 to 20, which is another match. And who is the second member in the stream is actually just me. Sarah Student is my study account. I recommend you all check it out if you're interested in Crazyhouse studies. Loads of stuff there. But it's not finished. It's not necessarily finished studies. They're just like raw studies. If you want to see my finished studies, go to my blog and check out in the top heading, check the link called Index of Studies. And there you'll see all my finished studies in Crazyhouse. And as I said, if there are loads of chess people watching saying, what is this weird Crazyhouse game? I really recommend it. It's super powered chess. It'll teach you how to mate, how to do mating attacks. It'll teach you how to see sacrifices. It'll teach you to calculate. It won't improve your endgames. That's the one thing. It'll improve your mating. It'll improve your sense of danger, of your lust for finding an attack, for finding a great attack. I mean, of course, in normal chess, you have to very slowly maneuver your pieces towards the opponent king. In Crazyhouse, you go straight for the king, you swap off pieces and you drop it around the king straight away. So it's a little bit faster version of chess, and so the games are slightly shorter. And the mating attacks are much faster. You've got to watch out. Like straight away, if white ever gets a pawn, watch out, h6. So, turns out white gets a pawn, and he puts it on h6. What a surprise. And already in this sort of position where the king is kind of with the bishop on h8, you have to really watch out for smothered mate ideas. Like if this was an empty square and there's nothing protecting it, this would be a smothered mate. Castles, knight here. So obviously white's doing quite nicely here. Takes, rook here, pushing. Bishop takes b2. He's trying to pick up a pawn. But this is like the game-winning move. Already, white was winning the whole game, but this to me is the game-winning move, because just like in normal chess, the bishop on g7 is such an important piece to the king. It's the key defender, and there's no way. He doesn't have a bishop for which to defend his key defender. He went and grabbed a pawn, which is great, but takes, and now suddenly white is the one controlling all these dark squares around the black king, and it's just very hard to get back control. He went knight to d7. You see what this is doing? He's trying to control the f6 square, so you can drop a bishop or pawn here. Bishop c3, just backing off and hitting the queen. There was actually an even stronger move here from white, just queen e1. And the idea is just to trade off queens, because if you trade off queens, this is a big threat. So just as an example, so if takes, rook takes, so just to get, we're controlling all the squares around our king. How to defend the mate. I mean, suppose you just did something like this, just queen here would be mate. Yeah, see, so bishop here, it's no good at all, just bishop takes bishop. So that's why you can't afford to trade off queens. And suppose you just backed off and you didn't trade off queens. Then, oh, I didn't see this. This is really nice. Okay, wow. Okay, knight at f6. And the idea is if the black king goes to a dark square, bishop here is checkmate. So we have to take it. But then we take back. Again, you have to take it. And then you take a rook. And the problem is that if you take back the queen, rook at h8 is checkmate. Boom. So you have to block, say with the bishop. Now what do we do? Rook at g7, this bishop is pinned, so he has to go here. Queen takes, he can still block. You can still block with something. Knight at g8, but the brilliant thing is I can actually just take it, because this knight is pinned, not defending it. So that was so that's why queen e1. Wow, what a move! Not even so. I was thinking just exchange off queens, which makes sense. It's not just exchange off queens; it's also exploit this e file. So really beautiful idea. Okay, he didn't do that. Instead, he just did bishop c3 and chicken. I don't know whether it was time pressure or what. He just saw all these threats and didn't know what to do, and did this, and white went, okay, I'll just take the queen. So he gives up his beautiful control of the diagonal, but this is not going to work out well. I mean, if you just take the knight, queen at g7, yeah. Okay, so after that game, it's 4-1 to Jasugi99. It's only one break of serve though, because it's like in tennis. You're 3 games ahead, but if your opponent wins as white and then wins as black and then wins as white again, you're back level. So at the halfway stage of the match, 4-1, and this is quite an interesting game. theoretically, this is quite an interesting game because it's e4, e5, so it's walking into mainline theory. Mainline theory might even be bishop c5. Bishop e7 is probably the second most popular move. If you look at the Explorer, bishop c5 has been played 29,000 times at top level. Bishop e7 19,000 times among 2200s. But bishop e7 is probably more popular in recent months because of theoretical refutations to bishop c5, for which you need to consult the finisher, who's the opening expert. Knight d4, but this is so black's actually done quite well here. Knight takes d5. Knight takes d5. So he's black sacrificed a pawn, but the point is, if you take this knight like this, then bishop takes knight, and you're winning this piece. So and black's doing quite nicely. So that's why white has to sacrifice a piece back. So at the end of that, actually, it's black who's actually gained some material. Black is up a piece for 2 pawns, if I'm right. So he's lost his d pawn and he's lost his f pawn, but he's got a piece for it. So okay, so that's not too bad. But he does have some pressure on his king here, and he sacks his queen for a bishop, which might look crazy. But black's got some good play. He's got initiative, and it's black to move. Now, this is actually an interesting theoretical position because this game had been played, for example, by Doooovid as black against JK the Bullfrog before. And in that position he played what I think is the theoretically best move, knight at f3. And what white should never do is take this knight, because this is what happened in a game between JK the Bullfrog and Doooovid. And Doooovid showed why you should never take that knight. Because this happened. Drops the queen, takes, rook takes bishop, and the queen came in, and this was game over. But they played again, and this time, after knight at f3, Doooovid played the much better move, king f1. And this move is actually quite strong for white. And in fact, JK the Bullfrog as white won this game. Even though it looks like you're losing the queen, so he went desperado with that knight, but just king takes knight. The king is now safe. Bishop here just takes it. Bishop here wins. Does he want the piece or does he want the knight? Apparently he wants the rook. Okay, I'm surprised by wanting the rook there. I mean, just out of curiosity, what's the engine say there? Yeah, bishop takes f7, strong. So why not bishop takes knight? Okay, I'm not sure. Queen at a4, knight at f4. So bishop takes f7 apparently strong. Oh, because you got a pawn to follow it up with. Yeah, interesting. So you're keeping control on f7, even though you're giving up the bishop. And in this position, I think Doooovid as black just resigned. White's just got so much material, and he's just hacking his way through into black's position. And the king is remarkably safe on e2. So this was an interesting theoretical position. Knight at f3, Doooovid had tried. It was the top move, but this time he played knight at h4, and I think it's a slight mistake. Queen here check, queen takes rook, queen here check, knight here check, pawn here, takes this knight, and this is okay. Black gets a check, but not much else. Okay, nasty threats. But white means business. Brings the queen in. Takes with the pawn. If knight takes pawn, the problem is what? Knight at c5. If bishop takes c5, queen takes knight. That's the problem. So the knight is pinned, and you can't take with the bishop. So you'd have to step up, and then you can take the knight anyway. And you can mate with 2 knights. Do you have to go knight takes b7? Can you just mate? Yeah, you have to go knight takes b7. Knight takes b7. And if he steps up again, this is very pretty. then at c4, and if he steps up again, then at c3. And if he steps back, then knight at a5 check, stopping him from running back, king d7, and at c6. And the rook is defended on the back rank, so he's cut off. So that's why he couldn't step up, because of this. So what else did he do? So that's why he couldn't take with the knight. He couldn't take with the knight because of this knight here check. So he stepped up instead. Pawn here check, stepped up. So king c6 was slightly better. King c6, queen would still come in. Knight here check, pawn here check, bishop coming in. But there are too many pawns and you eventually mate. But what happened in the game is he stepped up again. And just a very pretty move from Chicken to finish, after which Black resigned. He could have used a new pawn, but he doesn't need to worry about this pawn because it's protected by the queen, so he just pushes the existing pawn. And the reason this is such a pretty move is obviously if the king steps back, there's pawn at b5 checkmate, but there's something even prettier if king takes bishop. That bishop was protecting this pawn, so just so you might have been hoping, I'll just take the bishop and then run back, but no. Check defends the pawn. Queen defends this pawn. It's like you've just walked into an ambush. If I play the game like the last few moves, check, check, takes, check, check, and this checkmate. It's just walking straight into an ambush. Very pretty stuff. So, Chicken Crossroad holds serve as white. Match goes 4-2 between these top two in the candidates at the time. Game 7. And I think Chicken made a mistake in not continuing with his a6 d5. I think a6 d5 is good. What he instead... Oh, he did continue with a6 d5. Okay, sorry. I think maybe it was in the next game as Black. He played more passively. Okay, so this was still okay, but obviously White gets a big center. I think Jasugi was just too good this game, because you just see what's happening here. I mean, with withdrawing that knight, you just look at the Black development here. He has no development. And so this is actually just a very sad game for Black. So you might think, oh, the king is... What's the king doing on e2? But the king is very safe on e2. Very safe indeed. Sorry for those watching who want to challenge. This is just an analysis stream. So bishop has to go back to f8 to defend g7. Bishop g5. Just look how all White's pieces are streaming in. Queen here hitting the pawn, defends. Queen here. Takes. Okay, I think he allowed too much, maybe here. And even... So Chicken actually gets some dangerous checks in. But, ooh, even queen takes bishop. But in the end, he loses the queen. But I think Black is even getting some play here. Probably worth saying that instead of taking back this bishop, he could have gone straight for the kill with at d7. And the idea is if you take it, this is very hard to see, but you have to see we have two queens in hand. Knight at b6 takes, queen at c7 takes. And we have a second queen in hand, so now we can just mate. It's easy. And notice to discover. This is a very nice thing. Very important mate, I think, in Crazyhouse. The double check discovery, cutting the king off, checkmate, comes up a lot. So that was a very nice mate which was missed, and obviously the king can't sidestep a check like this. If you sidestep, you're getting mated. If you step up, that can't work either. With a pawn and a knight, even queen at d6 apparently. Takes. I think the idea is if king takes, oh, it's defended even, so there's no king takes. So we have the same pattern. King e8, push, and double checkmate. Okay, so recognizing he had two queens, he could have gone in for the kill. Instead, what Jasugi did this game, so it's kind of boring, is he just tried to take all the pieces, which is fine. it looks like he's trying to take one more piece, but actually notice black has nothing in hand. In this position, chicken crossroad resigned. He has to block with the pieces on the board, and they're all going to get eaten. So that was a very sad game for black. Just didn't develop properly. So I said game 3 was the highlight. If people are just joining, check it out after. I'll post it also on YouTube. Just post my YouTube on the where I do mainly Crazyhouse streams, but I also have some standard chess streams. So just check out the playlists, and I also have some atomic streams and some other variants. But mainly Crazyhouse. That's the idea. So this game, so game 8 as black, Dasugi 99. What chicken had been doing, apart from the first game as black, he did quite well. And in this position, chicken went king h1. But actually what was really strong in this position was just taking and taking here. And the idea is, if we just continue our attack, say bishop takes rook, we could even go knight at d6. And the point of this is that we want to get a mate with the knight here, checkmate. But to do that, we fork the king and the queen. So if king takes, knight here is checkmate. How can we see that? Notice 2 knights which are 3 apart like this always control a 2x2 square. So pawn here is a really brilliant move. If you take with the queen, that's not much good either, because you still go knight here, and the king is forced onto a square where you can get the queen with check. If you come here, queen here is checkmate. So you have to come here, but then queen here is checkmate. So do we run? But if we run, we're winning a queen with check, and it might be tempting in this position actually to drop a queen here, but actually even stronger is dropping a bishop here. With the idea, if you go here, we drop a queen, and if you go here, we drop that knight. Again, that's square. So backing up, queen takes knight was actually a really strong move, with the idea of knight takes f7 and knight at d6 to follow. And you can't afford to take this knight, is the other thing to say. I'll just turn on the engine to show the exact line. But yeah, new knight at g5. Why a new one? So that he can't sack his queen against it. And if he sidesteps to e7, for example, we've got another knight in hand. So you can just go knight at g6, step back, and f7 checkmate. So we've got too many knights. And if he tries to step up, okay, so I'm not sure exactly what happens, but apparently f5, e takes f5, clearing away for another knight on f4, king h6, knight f7 check, king h7, g6, king g8. So there's nothing forced, but you're just winning the queen and threatening too many mates. And and all black can do is throw spike checks. So queen takes e2 was a very strong move that chicken missed. Instead he went king h1, but he's still doing very nicely as white here. Black recognizes these knights are dangerous and even sacks his queen to get rid of one, hoping for a kind of counterattack. Knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, check, hitting the queen, check. But this is kind of desperation, and white in fact has forced mate here. Queen takes pawn, sacking the queen back. Pawn here check, king e8, pawn here check, pawn here check. So he wants the king to run away and only then recapture to make a queen. That's the idea of this move. So the king steps up, trying to keep connection with the bishop. Knight c5, takes, tries to keep connection with the bishop. The other bishop comes in. And here, probably chicken did find mate, but he had probably a faster mate with knight at b7, king here, takes, and pawn here. King has to go here, and with the knight, that's checkmate. Instead, of course, they're slower mates as well. Like pawn takes rook, obviously getting a queen is also mating. Pretty sharpish as well, with a smothered mate, rook here, knight here. Or queen takes whatever, blocks, and knight here, whatever. But instead, okay, so chicken found a slightly slower mate, just knight, another knight, pawn, another knight, pawn. He eventually hunted the king to mate. So at this point, it was actually 5 games to 3 to Jasugi 99. So after going down 3-love to begin with, it felt like Chicken was fighting back quite well. Jasugi 99 as white. Yeah, this was the game. Yeah, so again, I think just Chicken was really struggling as black and getting nice development. And here just sacking really hard to try and make something happen. And then bishop e7, maybe this is too passive, but it's really difficult to say what he should have done here. I mean, bishop at h6, bishop at g5 are suggested by the engine, but it's just very hard to play. But I guess this game was an opening masterclass from white. So what's the point of rook c1? It means whenever he wants a knight, he can pick up a knight. Knight here. Now what's he going to do? He's of course going to sack. Okay, he sacks on f6 first, then sacks on g7, and he's just working away on these light squares. And this is why this kind of setup as black, this kind of French defense, is actually really hard to play, because unless you know how to defend these dark squares, it's just really difficult. Takes, knight here, check, picks up the rook, bishop here, you're threatening a mate with rook at h8, you're also threatening the queen, and Chicken just resigned. So with that, Jasugi 99 takes the match, but of course it's not what matters, it's not games, it's not the match win, it's the games, because the person who becomes the candidate is the one who's won the most games altogether, so it's still worth fighting for in the 10th game. And how did Jasugi do as black in game 10? He started strong, 3-love. Since then it was holding serve, holding serve. How did he do in game 10? So it turned out in game 10, Jasugi 99 was doing rather well, rather decently, but he'd sacked quite heavily. And if white had only just played a nice defensive move like bishop at f2, the game would continue, and white would be the favourite. But instead, Chicken played a little bit too aggressively with knight h5, not defending his weaknesses properly. And the real weakness is not g3, it's actually h4, surprisingly. Queen comes to h4, and there are just too many threats. And there's no defense. Knight g3 he played. Rook h1, really beautiful move, because if knight takes rook, there's a smother with the pawn. So he has to evacuate. So he's losing a queen with check whenever black wants to take that queen with check. Having said that, why can't we go king e2 here? Well, we still take the queen, even if it's not with check. So he gets the queen with check, queen here check, bishop here check, bishop takes knight. Now here, Jasugi 99 as black actually has quite a nice mate. So this will be probably the final puzzle of the day. Those want to try their hand at it, and I should turn the engine off. It's queen in the corner, and of course you cannot step up because queen takes rook is mate. So you have to block. Ooh, what? Yeah, so he played queen in the corner, but he didn't then play... Okay, so that's better than queen in the corner. There's knight h2, check, and then sack your queen on the rook. So the point is, if you go here, this is just bad news. Queen takes rook, queen takes bishop, queen here, and rook here is checkmate. It's a very easy mate. So you have to, after knight at h2, you have to step up. But then you sack your queen, rook here check, and you want to put a queen here, but the king will just keep running. So you bring the bishop out to block it off, and then queen here is checkmate. So quite a simple mate, really. But it involved thinking of sacking that queen and saying, well, I've got another queen in hand anyway. Instead, we saw Jasugi 99 just gradually trying to grind his way through, trying to get queen takes g2 checkmate, trying to get another pawn. Queen takes g1 he's going for, check. Nice going for both these two squares which are weak. Chicken just gives his king some luft. Bishop comes in, takes here, takes here, takes here, takes here. And actually, sorry, at this point, after add h2, white just resigned. Because whatever he does, he's getting mated. There was actually a slightly cuter mate, which is actually knight at h3. Notice this bishop is cutting the king off. This bishop's cutting the king off. So he's only got these two squares. He has to step up. And bishop here is checkmate because of the pin. So that would have been a slightly cuter mate. Instead he went at h2. And the idea here is, well, you could do, for example, knight at e3. And bishop here and queen here is checkmate. You could go knight at h4. If you step up, bishop at g2 is checkmate. So you have to step back. but then bishop here, knight here is checkmate. So basically whatever you do is checkmate, and that's why chicken resigned. You go knight here, check, bishop here, and that's checkmate. Or you could even checkmate with the bishop and go bishop here, check, king here, bishop here, check, and knight there, checkmate. So lots of mates, and white resigned, and so that was 7-3 to Jasugi99 to take the match, and so that means chicken is pretty much, chicken is out of contention to be the challenger after losing this match, and basically the only person who can catch Jasugi99 now is International Master GSVC, but in order to do so he has to 10-0 against Jasugi99 and go 9-1 against 4 other candidates. It's possible, but not really likely. So we can look forward. We've got 20 more candidates matches to come, but unless GSVC can pull off a miracle, we can look forward to a final in the Crazyhouse World Championship between Jasugi99 and International Master opperwezen. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time. I'll just drop again the link to my YouTube and to my blog, so you maybe I'll drop a link to the standings as well. Let's drop a link to the standings so you can see what's been going on. Also, obviously, check out Jan Lee's YouTube as well. If you go to my YouTube and go to About, you can find links to everyone else who streams Crazyhouse. You can also, if you go to my YouTube, you can also find playlists of all the stuff I do. So sometimes Crazyhouse, sometimes Atomic, sometimes Standard Chess, mainly Crazyhouse though. You can find even some games between Yasser Serouan and International Master opperwezen with Opper commentating. How about that? So lots of good stuff. So this is the way things stand at the moment. I know it's slightly cut off, but actually that last column is the column that matters. Jasugi99 on 85.5. Chicken on 66, but having played all his games. 85.5 with the only person who can catch him being... So Bugzilla has got 2 matches to go, so could get up to 73. GSVC on 39.5 with 5 matches to go could get up to 89.5. And one of those matches is against Jasugi. So that's why I said you need 1 10-0 and 4 9-1s. So yeah, you can see all the results here. You can also, in the games link, if you click on games, you can get another page with all the game links. And actually also on the original page there's some useful links here. There are future matches, the Lichess forum where it's all organised, a YouTube playlist with over 100 streams of all past matches, my blog, which I just linked, and the elimination bracket, which was how these candidates were decided. These 12 candidates. And on my blog you can also see some recaps from the 2019 World Championship, the 2018 World Championship, and on my YouTube I've collected playlists back in the day in 2017, before I was even streaming. There's some streams by Krosky and Jan Lee dating all the way back to 2017, and of course these players, a lot of these players have been playing since even the 90s on Fix. Players like Bugzilla and Master Tan. Well, Master Tan not quite so long, but Mugwort has been playing a long time, and Schwanet, and Jan Lee himself. So, and Chicken Crossroad quite a long time as well. But Chicken Crossroad, but there are also new players like who's the newest player of these? Art of Deception is quite new, and King Switcher are just here in the Crazyhouse World Championship candidates for the first time. And Barentoni was in the 2019, so he's getting better and better. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Game 3, if you missed the beginning of the stream, Game 3 was the crazy game. But I did quite detailed analysis on the first 3 games especially, because I thought they were really rich and interesting. So thanks everyone for watching, and goodbye. Have a good day. Have a good week.